Harvest season is always the busiest time of the year on my family's farm. When the corn is ready, every second counts. We start before sunrise, grease up the equipment, fuel the tractor, and work until the last rays of daylight slip away. The tractor is my lifeline during this time. It pulls the wagons, runs the augers, and hauls the corn to storage. Without it, I'd be weeks behind and risk losing a huge part of the crop. On this particular morning, I had just finished filling one wagon and was heading slowly back toward the field. The road we use is technically within the neighborhood's homeowners association boundary. I don't live in the HOA, our farm predates the whole development by decades, but the new subdivision sprawls right up to the edge of my land. Naturally, some folks there don't love seeing tractors and dust near their manicured lawns. And that's where Karen enters the picture. She lives in the first house past the field, and for months she's been vocal about how my eyesore farm equipment and noisy harvests ruin her peace. She's complained to the HOA board, called zoning enforcement, and even told me once to take my hobby somewhere else. Never mind that farming isn't a hobby, it's my livelihood and the reason the land was valuable enough to build her house on in the first place. That morning, as I eased the tractor down the side road at maybe 10 miles an hour, I noticed Karen's SUV backing out of her driveway. I gave a wide berth, hugging the gravel shoulder. Farm machinery isn't nimble, but I'm used to being cautious around cars. Instead of waiting, though, she whipped her vehicle backward, glaring straight at me as if daring me to move. Before I could even downshift, she accelerated, and the inevitable happened. The rear quarter panel of her shiny white SUV scraped against my front tire and axle. The crunch echoed. Her bumper cracked, paint flaked off, and my tractor hardly flinched. It's built like a tank. I shut it down, climbed down, and asked if she was okay. Her response: screaming. She stomped out of her car, waving her hands, and accused me of destroying her vehicle and blocking her road. She said farm equipment had no business being there and that she'd have the HOA fine me for reckless driving. I tried to explain that I was going slow, on the shoulder, and had the right of way. She wasn't having it. Instead, she pulled out her phone, snapping pictures of the tractor like she was gathering evidence for some high-stakes lawsuit. I told her calmly, "We need to report this to the police. That's the procedure for any accident." Her face twisted. "No, we don't need the police. You're paying for this, and I'll make sure the HOA gets involved. That's all." Well, that's not how insurance works, and it's definitely not how the law works. So I called the non-emergency line myself and reported the collision. That's when the situation shifted from irritating to downright satisfying. When the officers arrived, I gave my statement, explained my slow speed, and pointed out the tire marks on the gravel shoulder that proved I wasn't in the main road. They inspected both vehicles, took notes, and then asked Karen for her driver's license and insurance. That's when things unraveled. She hemmed, hawed, and finally admitted she left her wallet inside. After 20 minutes of checking, it turned out she didn't just leave it inside. Her license had been suspended months earlier for unpaid tickets, and her insurance had lapsed. The officer's face went from polite patience to stern professionalism. He told her flatly that she shouldn't have been driving at all, let alone causing accidents. Karen erupted again, shouting that this was her neighborhood, and that they should be ticketing me for bringing a farm vehicle into a residential zone. The officer shook his head and reminded her that farm equipment is legally permitted on public roads, especially when accessing adjacent land. Then came the best part. Because she was unlicensed and uninsured, her SUV was not going anywhere under her control. The tow truck was called in. Watching her vehicle get hooked up and hauled down the street, while she fumed on the sidewalk, was poetic justice. Neighbors came out to see what the commotion was, and I caught more than one smirk as they pieced together what had happened. By the time the dust settled, I had a police report in hand confirming that Karen had backed into my tractor, and she was left without wheels. I climbed back into the cab, turned the key, and rumbled back to the field with a grin. The corn wasn't going to harvest itself, but my day had just gotten a whole lot better. The morning after the accident, I expected things to quiet down. After all, the police had written up the report, Karen's SUV was gone to the impound lot, and I had crops to harvest. But if you've ever dealt with someone like her, you know that wasn't the end of it, it was just the beginning. I was halfway through unloading a wagon into the grain bin when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from the HOA president. Even though my farm technically sits outside their jurisdiction, I still get their calls whenever Karen stirs up drama. The message went something like this. "Hello, this is Ron from the HOA board. We received multiple complaints yesterday about large machinery on the roadway and an altercation with one of our residents. We need to discuss potential violations of neighborhood guidelines." I couldn't help but laugh. First, tractors aren't large machinery in the criminal sense, they're farm vehicles, fully legal on the road. Second, their guidelines don't apply to me. My property isn't part of their HOA, my land has been here for over 100 years. But Karen had clearly convinced them I was a menace to society. Later that afternoon, I decided to pay a courtesy visit to the HOA office just to clear things up. When I walked in, Ron looked uneasy, like he was about to deliver bad news. He started with a polished speech about community harmony and respecting the needs of homeowners. I let him finish, then slid a copy of the police report across his desk. "Karen backed into my tractor," I said plainly. She was driving uninsured, with a suspended license. The officers already confirmed I was operating legally. This is the official record. Ron skimmed the report, and I could see the color drain from his face. It's hard to argue with a stamped police document. Still, he tried to hedge. "Well, Karen feels very strongly that the farm operations are disruptive to the neighborhood's quality of life." I leaned in and asked, "Does she also feel strongly about endangering lives by driving without insurance?" Because that's the real issue here. That shut him up pretty quick. He muttered something about needing to review the situation, and dismissed me. I walked out knowing Karen's HOA complaint campaign had just lost all credibility. But Karen wasn't done. 2 evenings later, as I was parking the tractor for the night, she marched up to the edge of my property. Her arms were crossed, and her face was red enough to match a ripe tomato. "You think you won, don't you?" she snapped. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole neighborhood. My car got impounded because of you." I stayed calm. "Your car got impounded because you were driving illegally. That's not on me." She pointed a finger at me. "You farmers act like you own everything. Well, this is a residential area now, and your days of tearing up the roads are numbered. I'll make sure the board finds a way to shut you down." I shrugged. "Good luck with that. Farming is protected under state law. Unless you can outlaw corn, I'll be here long after your HOA changes presidents." She stomped away, muttering curses under her breath. I thought that would be the last direct confrontation for a while, but Karen had one more trick up her sleeve. The next week, I noticed an official-looking envelope in my mailbox. It was a letter drafted by the HOA board, strongly requesting that I limit farm equipment use to non-residential hours, and suggesting that further violations might result in fines. I nearly spit out my coffee laughing. They had no authority over me. None. But it was obvious Karen had pushed them to try anyway. Instead of replying directly, I forwarded the letter to my attorney, who specializes in agricultural law. He got back to me with a single line: "Frame it and hang it in your barn, it's worthless." So that's exactly what I did. Right between a rusted horseshoe and a faded photo of my grandfather on his first tractor, I hung the HOA's warning letter, like a trophy. Every time I walk past it, I'm reminded of Karen's failed crusade. As harvest wrapped up, I started hearing from other neighbors. Some stopped by to thank me for standing my ground. Turns out, Karen had a reputation for bullying others too, writing passive-aggressive notes about trash cans, calling the city over, loud pets, even measuring people's lawns with a tape measure to check for HOA violations. My run-in with her had exposed her nonsense to the entire community. One neighbor summed it up best: "You didn't just harvest corn this year, you harvested karma." By the time the corn was all hauled in and the last wagons emptied into storage, I figured the whole ordeal with Karen was behind me. I had my police report, my harvest was on schedule, and the HOA's silly letter was already framed as barn decor. But karma wasn't done with her yet. It started about 2 weeks after the accident. I was fueling up the tractor when one of the local deputies pulled into the yard. He knew my family, we've farmed this land for generations, and after a little small talk, he mentioned something interesting. "Remember that lady who hit your tractor?" he asked. I nodded. "Well, turns out that incident opened up a can of worms. She had a suspended license for unpaid tickets, but when they dug deeper, they found she also had an outstanding bench warrant for failing to appear in court over one of those tickets. The tow was the least of her problems. I raised my eyebrows. So what happens now? The deputy chuckled. She's been cited again, and if she doesn't clear it up soon, she'll be spending a night in county. I thanked him for the update, and as he drove away, I couldn't help but feel a little poetic satisfaction. Karen had tried to paint me as the reckless villain, but her own lies and negligence were catching up to her. Sure enough, word spread around the neighborhood. Folks started whispering about how Karen had been escorted from a board meeting by police when they served her with paperwork. The mighty HOA warrior was now the subject of gossip, and she didn't like it one bit. A few evenings later, I was out checking the fences when another neighbor, Mrs. Jensen, stopped by with a casserole. "You've had a rough harvest season with that woman," she said kindly. "Just know most of us don't feel the way she does. We like having your farm here, it makes this place feel real, not just another cookie-cutter neighborhood." That meant a lot. Farming can feel lonely, especially when new developments push in on all sides. But hearing the community voice their support reassured me I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. She started blasting posts on the HOA's Facebook page, claiming the tractor accident was part of a larger safety issue, and that farm vehicles had no place near families. She conveniently left out the details about her suspended license and lack of insurance. People weren't buying it, though. One neighbor replied publicly, "Karen, you hit a tractor because you weren't paying attention and you weren't legally allowed to drive. Don't blame the farmer for your mistakes." That comment got more likes than anything else in the thread. It was like the whole community had finally decided enough was enough. Then came the insurance fiasco. Even though Karen didn't have valid coverage at the time of the crash, she tried to claim damages anyway. She filed a complaint with her old insurer, saying I was at fault. But when the adjuster contacted me, I happily forwarded the police report again. The officer's notes made it crystal clear. She backed into me, and I was operating lawfully. The adjuster even called me afterward and said, "Don't worry, this one's not sticking." Honestly, we're more interested in how she thought she could make a claim without active coverage. So not only did she fail to get her SUV fixed through insurance, but she was also stuck paying impound fees and storage costs out of pocket. Her shiny white SUV sat in her driveway for weeks after she finally retrieved it, bumper duct taped in place, a constant reminder of her failed battle. The final blow came at the next HOA election. Karen had been gunning for a board seat for years, hoping to get more power to impose her vision on the neighborhood. She campaigned hard, painting herself as the protector of property values. But thanks to her recent antics, she didn't just lose, she came in dead last. People actually joked that my tractor got more votes than she did. By winter, Karen was quieter than I'd ever seen her. No more yelling across the fence, no more threatening letters, no more storming up to my driveway. Maybe she finally realized her crusade wasn't worth the embarrassment. Or maybe she just ran out of fight. Either way, peace returned, and I got back to focusing on the work that really mattered, taking care of the land my family built. Looking back, I never asked for drama with Karen. All I wanted was to get my harvest done and use the road like I always had. But sometimes, people create their own storms and then get mad when they get wet. Karen hit my tractor, tried to twist the story, and ended up with her car towed, her reputation in tatters, and her HOA influence evaporated. As one of my neighbors put it best, standing by my grain bin one frosty morning, "The corn came in good this year, but the karma crop was even better."